So when the first model went out from Stability AI in July 2022, and with commercial license, it was obvious for the founders that was the moment where we could build an adjacent product to remove background. So we have a Facebook community group where we share our updates and where they test the product, etc. And they were telling us, wow, this is big and this is amazing. And the wow effect, that you want to see when you open an app. By having this new wow effect around, I import a photo, I generate a background, I got what the product is about, we decreased dramatically the CPI by an order of magnitude of 10.
Welcome to Subversive, a podcast dedicated to sharing stories from the best consumer subscription apps in the world. We'll bring you lessons for how to grow your consumer subscription business, including insights and inflection points that led to exponential growth from leaders at category-defining companies and innovative startups. Let's get into the show. My guest today is Olivier Lemarié, the VP of Growth at Photoroom, a powerful web and mobile photo editing tool used by millions of creators, sellers, and entrepreneurs worldwide. In this episode, I talked to Olivier about how Photoroom's breakthrough AI-powered product innovation allowed sellers of online products to replace photo backgrounds in a fraction of the time. We discuss how this new product feature unlocked additional organic growth opportunities for Photoroom and improved the efficiency of its performance marketing campaigns, ultimately allowing it to expand into new international markets, including Thailand, Mexico, and Brazil. All right, welcome, Olivier, to the Subversive podcast. I'm super excited to have you on today and to talk more about Photoroom, one of the top photo editing tools on the market, and you all have been growing like crazy over the last few years. We're going to talk a little bit more about that story today, but before we do, we'd love to start with just a little bit of background on Photoroom, what it is and what makes it different than other photo editing apps, and a little bit of background on you and how you made your way to Photoroom.
Hi Phil, thanks for having me today. So Photoroom is an AI photo editing app. Our goal and what we do is helping and enabling seller having great pictures that sells online. So we are enabling them to list their product online, but also how they can market their product, do social posts, logos, etc. We are coming from becoming where we used to be a remove background feature app, and now we are building more of an AI creative agency solution for any sellers. About me, how did I land at Photoroom? So I'm working in app marketing for, more than 10 years, starting in gaming in Berlin at Wooga. Went back to France to lead marketing and growth for Molotov, a French OTT similar to Hulu platform. And when I met the founders 5 years ago, and I will maybe can share a bit more about this, it was kind of a no-brainer for me that they were building a rocket ship, and I was just had to jump in.
And you were one of the very first employees, weren't you, Olivia? You joined, as I understand it, in 2020, right around the time the pandemic was first getting started. So talk me through what Photoroom looked like when you joined the company as one of the first employees, and then how it's evolved over the last 5 years.
Yeah, exactly. When I joined, it was the two founders, Matt and Elliot, and when I was developer. And they did, two founders did an amazing job in finding a market fit in matters of weeks, a few months. They went just getting into YC, and they already had this fast iteration loop of weekly cadence, testing fast, speaking to the user every day, and bringing and removing the friction and the pain point for the user. And when I first met them, for me, it was kind of obvious that I should join them and help them grow faster because the product as a market fit, the numbers was already crazy, the initial numbers. And they were building so fast that it was obvious for me that we were into something.
That must have been so exciting. And having been the first employee at a startup before, I know how exciting those early days can be. Yeah. Last question before we get into the core topic for today is just, there are a lot of photo editing apps out there, and there have been more and more in recent years for obvious reasons. The creator economy is exploding, and there's such a need for photo and video editing software. What is it that sets Photoroom apart? What is it that makes you different from some of the other tools out there on the market?
Yeah, it's a mix of, we are targeting and we are useful for people selling online, and people who sell what they want, especially in when what they want is speed, what they want is accuracy, We just released a study with Depop, the marketplace, saying that 73 people of sellers consider that of people buying online rely on the product photography. And this is our differentiation is because we have the best technology around background removal and generating background. We have the accuracy, and this is what matters for people. This is for sellers. It doesn't matter necessarily for you or me when we do a picture and we send it to our friends. You know, you do a Christmas or holiday picture. If the background remove is not perfect, that's fine. You can use Apple own text. That's fine. But if you sell online, you want this to be perfect, and especially as you mentioned, the creator economy, the side hustle economy, you don't have time and you don't have the money to organize a photo shooting, do everything by yourself, etc., etc. You want a tool that removes the friction in a matter of seconds, and that's our unique selling point, basically.
So I think that's such a great segue into the inflection point that we want to talk about today. And that is in 2023, you all launched this new, what you call automagical AI powered feature for background replacements. And it really was automagical. I mean, it dramatically sped up and improved the quality of adjusting these backgrounds and replacing them with creative backgrounds to help empower sellers, which is your target customer. This was right on the heels of ChatGPT hitting the mainstream in late 2022. I guess my first question is, how is Photoroom able to release this feature so early in the AI era and before many of your competitors?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I didn't mention this when I met the founders, but something that strikes me in 2020 is so our CTO used to work in ML and AI, studied this, and he was already working into that. And our CEO used to work in photo and video editing app for already almost 10 years at that time. And his previous company was already a video AI company at a time where AI was not cool, you know. I mean, not as cool as after ChatGPT. And for them, it was obvious that AI will also change photo editing for everyone. And that it was just a question of when and not a question of if that we will be able to produce this kind of new tool. So we are more waiting for breakthrough technology than understanding when it happens, if maybe we could do something out of it. So when the first model went out from Stability AI in July 2022, with commercial license, it was obvious for the founders that that was the moment where we could build an adjacent product to remove background. And we were the best positioned because of this, let's say, product and tech intuition from the founder. And also because to be able to generate a nice background, you first need to remove the background. If you are not good at removing the background, even if you generate something, it doesn't look good. And but even with this, it took us 7 months to iterate on the tech, because it's not only about being able to generate the background, it's also to be able to generate a background on a mobile app. And on a mobile app, as you know, and as everyone who is listening to us, you don't wait for 10 minutes. You can't wait. You are not on a desktop where we can let you know, okay, we will send you by email the results in 10 minutes, and you can do something else and go back in 10 minutes and you have the results. No, on mobile, you need to have the answer. You can wait a few seconds, but that's it. So we had a lot of iteration about the product, about the tech, and at the same time, we're working on more how we can market that, how we can leverage this coming feature into our acquisition strategy. And everything kind of came together in the early days of 2023, when we were able to see some good results from, like, you input an image, we remove the background, you tap on one suggested, or you generate your own background, and boom, you have the results in a matter of seconds. It happened in January, February 2023.
I know we're going to talk about all of the growth opportunities this unlocked, but before we do that, let's go back to why was this such a breakthrough for your target customer, this prosumer customer who is creating all of these visual assets and then using them to sell products or services online? What was it specifically about this new feature that really changed the game for them? And then we can get into what you saw in the metrics, and then what you as the growth leader did to really harness the power of this new feature to accelerate growth for the business.
So Photoroom, we were removing background, and that was perfect for people reselling on the marketplaces like Poshmark, Depop, Vinted, etc. Because of course you have a tons of image, You take picture of all of them, use the batch mode function from Photoroom, everything you remove, you upload, perfect, you can sell. But that works for people who are reselling. If you have your Shopify brand, if you have your Shopify store, if you have your Etsy store, if you have all of this kind of store, well, you don't want a white background. You want something that either fits your brand or that is potentially seasonal, or you want to put your product photography, your product in context, Like if you are selling, I don't know, a cup of coffee on a white background, okay, you can sell it, but it's much better if it's sitting on a desk, on a nice wood desk, etc. And that's why it was super relevant for our current audience, but also for an adjacent audience of people selling online that our product was not totally, we were helping them already to remove the background, but we were not getting to the extra step of putting the product into a context.
Got it. And it sounds like it also significantly accelerated the speed at which prosumers were able to do this. Like what sort of latency did it require prior to the launch of this feature to remove a background and replace it with one that was more branded or customized for their needs? And then what percentage of that time did this feature launch cut out the equation?
I don't know exactly for before, but what is sure is they had to remove the background instantly, and then they could play a bit with the set of background we were offering them. But many of them was using Photoroom at that time with other tools, with more creative tool to then put the product photo with a perfect background removed on another tool to then be creative and leverage other type of templates. And now with this, in a matter of, you are downloading Photoroom, opening, importing your product picture, remove background is a question of less than 1 second, 2 taps, and you have your image. So in potentially, I don't know, but 15 seconds from download to, let's say 1 minute from download to export, you have your product in context, and you can just save it or export it to your store.
And when that's such a huge change, I think speed is such an underappreciated feature in and of itself. But the difference between, having to wait 30 seconds versus a couple seconds to be able to go through this process of removing the background and replacing it with the one you want, and then seeing the new finished product and being able to iterate on it is pretty significant. So when did you know that this feature was going to be a big hit? Was there a particular moment that you and the team remember, or a particular metric that you all were looking at, and it was clear that, okay, this is going to be huge? At which point you and your team started to think about how you could then leverage it into more growth for the business?
We didn't have any doubt that could be huge. We maybe didn't realize how big that could be for us. At the same time, again, following the founder's intuition on this one, that anyways, this was the future. And kind of the white background, people selling on white background on eBay or Amazon is a kind of, how to say that? It's a kind of hack for people because it's better to sell on a white background than on a background which is not nice, But in the end, you prefer to sell your product in context with your brand. It should sell more and better, So we were convinced that was anyways the product direction we wanted to go. What we didn't know is how fast and how much we would be able to scale this and put this to in front of the eyes of as many sellers on worldwide as possible.
And so you saw an immediate response from your customers. There was a lot of positive user sentiment around the new feature.
Yeah.
What sort of impact did it have on the metrics? And where did you see it start to impact? Was it user growth? Was it subscriber growth? Was it revenue? Was it all of the above? And then we can start to talk about what sort of organic and paid acquisition opportunities that it unlocked.
I mentioned product vision, but also something important is our community. We tested the product within our community. So we have a Facebook community group where we share our updates and where they test the product, etc. And they were telling us, wow, this is big and this is amazing. And the wow effect, that you want to see when you open an app. And we had it with remove background 2 years before, like immediately and magically perfectly removing the background. We had this wow moment. And then we had it again in a way with something adjacent. And we were like, okay, product vision, it fits. Tech vision, we are the only one being able to put that on mobile. And community is happy. we should just do ads and see how it goes, And our goal at that time and the way we see growth so far at Photoroom is mostly, subscriber growth and that was our main goal. Are we able to grow our subscriber base with this feature and by how much? Yeah.
Which makes sense. I mean, subscribers are the fuel for your business. That's what's driving subscription revenue growth. So let's get into the organic opportunities this unlocked, and then we can talk about paid acquisition. And let's start with your freemium model. So as a first question, what features on Photoroom are free versus what features require a subscription? And then we can talk about how the free user experience contributes to organic growth from your user base.
Yeah, historically, the vision we have is we want to give access to the vast majority of users to AI for photo editing. This is the vision. And that goes with, for example, background removal. I mean, it's not unlimited, but it's almost unlimited at Photoroom in the free version. You can do like 250 without any watermark today. I can go into this later, but at that time, we had the watermark, but it was for free. People were paying mostly to generate, to remove background by batch. That was the main driver of subscription. With removing the watermark, as many freemium apps, especially in the photo editing, you have the watermark by default, which is, of course, one of the initial organic loop that when you start is super powerful for small or starting apps because basically it's free branding. And when you start, it's amazing. So some of your users pay to remove it, and some of our users were paying to have access to the batch mode. When we launched this AI feature so that we call AI backgrounds, which magically add a background, we put it indeed in the premium tier, so the pro subscription. And since then, our vision is most of the AI feature are behind the paywall. So this has been our approach, like generating shadows with Photoroom, having some AI retouch feature, etc., are behind a paywall. And today, in mid 2025, we are moving again into giving a bit for free, and we are moving into a most AI company are doing, which is you give a bit for free if you want more, or if you want very specific feature, you need to upsell. But for 2 years, we have been putting most of our AI features behind the paywall.
And that makes sense, both because those are some of the most valuable features, but also because more and more companies are spending non-trivial amounts of money to be able to support the underlying LLM costs to support these AI features. What would you say is the aha moment for a new user on Photoroom? Like, what's the moment when they realize, even before they subscribe, that Photoroom is this powerful tool that's different than what they've been able to find elsewhere? And then how does that aha moment influence how you think about which features go before and after the paywall for Photoroom?
First moment, for sure, is when we ask them in the onboarding to remove the background. They import a picture and it removes the background. And the first onboarding of Photoroom, super successful, was just this, we had the splash screen, asked to import a photo, remove the background, you are into the app. When I joined Photoroom, that was it. Only this, no login, no question, no paywall, nothing, straight to the product. And people were amazed by this. And Apple took it as an example, etc., because of course, this is the best experience you can give to a user. Then when you grow, of course, it's not enough. When I joined, after a few weeks, we implemented the paywall in the onboarding. Then we're like, okay, but we don't know what our users are doing. So we want to add questions and test login, etc. But at the end of the day, you want your user to get the value prop and the moment during the onboarding. If you don't do that, you can't scale and you don't get the value, people leave, etc., etc.
Yeah, that's so well said. And I find that the best consumer and prosumer subscription apps show, don't tell, right? Their onboarding experiences, they don't tell you why this product's special. They actually show you, ideally within your first few minutes of using the product. Duolingo is perhaps one of the best examples of this. They don't tell you why Duolingo is this unique gamified language learning app. They just take you through your first language lesson in whatever language you choose. And then at the end of it, you get your points and you get your streak and your first badge, and you understand, oh, this is different. This makes language learning fun. So it sounds like You all did the same thing with your onboarding experience. You come in, you immediately upload a photo, you remove the background, you understand how quick and easy it is to do. You talked a little bit earlier about the watermark and how powerful the watermark was for driving top of funnel awareness of Photoroom, driving viral adoption. Can you talk a little bit more about that loop? Like, what is the experience of a free user removing the background or altering a photo, but then if they're not a subscriber, at least if they're beyond a certain limit of non-watermarked photos, they've got the watermark, and so that spreads awareness. How does that loop work?
A bit, as you said, so historically, you were taking a picture, you had the watermark as soon as you export your photo, you save it, and we were able to see that people in online group, Facebook communities, Reddit, etc., they were sharing photos with Photoroom brand, and we even find some small business owners in the middle of nowhere that are printing flyers with Photoroom logo.
Mm,
It's pre-branding, as you say, so it gives some word of mouth. And this combined with the fact that remove background is one of the biggest keyword of the App Store,
mm,
or Google search as well, you get this kind of loop of you have the best product in terms of technology. People recognize it because they see the logo and they associated the brand to one of the biggest keyword of the App Store. And that help us grow quite fast in the ranking and get some organic traffic. But at some point when you grow, I don't remember exactly when, but after this AI background scale, you want to think again about this because yes, it's free branding, but at the same time, it's deteriorating your free user experience and ultimately
hmm
your activation or your free user retention. And when you want to build a company for the very long term and you want people to stay as long as possible, you challenge yourself. You're like, okay, it's free branding, but people start to know about Photoroom. I mean, we are not Duolingo, of course, Canva, of course, but it's starting. So you consider removing it. And that's what we end up doing, removing the watermark around a year and a half ago.
hmm
Uh, and we remove it after having tested the impact on activation and retention of free user versus what we were losing in terms of revenue.
Yep.
And we did this trade-off about, yes, we are happy. We are okay to lose this percentage of subscriber for the sake of long-term subscription and long-term free retention and long-term conversion.
And I'm so glad you brought this up because I think this is a tension that every subscription business faces, or at least every freemium subscription business, right? Which is on the one hand, the more value you give away for free, the better your MAU retention is going to look, and the more at bats you give yourself to convert free users into subscribers down the line, you also presumably get higher net promoter scores and more viral word of mouth. But on the other hand, if you're too generous and if you give away too much value for free, then you hurt your trial start rates or your trial conversion rates, your subscriber conversion rates,
Yeah.
even your subscriber retention rates, because at some point your subscribers realize, well, if I can get 80% of the value for free, then why am I paying for this service? So how have you all navigated that tension as Photoroom has evolved? And what are some of the, the inflection points or the changes in the evolution of the business that have caused you to rethink the right balance there?
Yeah. I think it's a mix of data and product vision in the sense that we want to align as what's good. Well, one of the value proposition of Photoroom is our tool. If your tool is great, if our the suite of tools are great for seller, they should be happy to pay more because we are helping them making more money. And
Mm-hmm.
it's amazing for a growth leader to work for a company that you will grow if you do a good job to help your customer. You are not like, when I was working at in gaming or at Molotov in TV consumption, this is not exactly the same. You don't have the same alignment of interest with your
Right.
customer. So, and with Photoroom, our value proposition again is accuracy and speed. So if we provide accuracy and speed for the user, and if we provide tools in the pro plan or higher tier plan to do their job and to do marketing and listing faster and with more accuracy, then they will be happy to pay more. We are just bringing
Mm-hmm.
them more value. So this is a bit the product vision. And in that case, you want people to come back, not frustrated. You want to give them a better experience if they're casual user, because you or me, we are potentially, let's say, a casual user of Photoroom. And at some point we decide to start our own company. if you have been happy using Photoroom for free and remove background for free when you were doing basic casual editing, you will likely come back to remove a background for your business. And maybe at that time you will pay.
Yep.
And this is the bet. And as soon as then comes the data, as soon as you are not deteriorating too much your revenue metric and retention metric, then product vision should be the decision maker.
Yeah, I love that. My interpretation of what you said there is a lot of consumer subscription apps, certainly games are a good example of this, and that's the example you brought up. It's somewhat extractive. They're going to pay a certain amount of money, but the value they're getting out of your product oftentimes is for entertainment. In a worst case, it's empty calories. And so there's only so much they're going to use your product. Whereas for a prosumer subscription product, and in many cases, your customers are prosumers using Photoroom to run their business, you're actually helping them to generate more revenue and to expand their business. And so you can grow with them. And it allows you to play the long game a little bit more because your net revenue retention should be very high if you have a good product. So this gets into the last question I wanted to ask in this section, which is just, you launched this AI-powered feature for background removal in early 2023. It sounds like your creator network really blew up talking about it online in forums like Reddit. How did they help to then accelerate viral adoption of the product?
Yes, this is something I realized earlier in 2021 when I was alone. Still, I was hiring my first person in the growth and marketing team, and with our CEO, we're realizing that Photoroom was a kind of the hidden tool, hidden weapon for a reseller. So when when we are going into Depop reseller or Poshmark reseller group, everyone was like, "Oh, I discovered this tool. It's amazing. Blah 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 blah." But it was a kind of hidden thing. And we are like, okay, it's good that people love it because it's always better to have 1,000 people who love your product, but we want most people to know about it. And we start noticing that some people were spreading the word about it on TikTok, like random people in a way, not even big creator, but people who were just, oh, by the way, I discovered this tool. I did a TikTok about it. It's amazing. It's removing the background in 2 seconds. And we start reaching out to them and telling them, but one of the basic of growth is you start by things that don't scale, So I was reaching out to them and saying, okay, you did this video. Can you do 2 more for a few $100? Yeah. Why not? Then you have 1, 2, 3, 5 that speak about you and in an organic way, even if it's a way of advertising. And we saw it was working quite well for us. And we expand this during the 2022 year for remove background. But at the end of 2022, we had, if I remember correctly, around 60 to 70 creators working with us and promoting regularly Photoroom and Photoroom feature. So when this AI background tool went up and went out, of course, we rely on them to spread the word and expand the content and the education of the future around the future.
Got it. And I think this is a good transition into our last set of questions around paid acquisition. So it sounds like you have this creator network. They already love Photoroom. That's part of why you recruited them. They're creating a good amount of content organically about Photoroom, but then you provide financial incentives for them to create even more content or to promote their content on various channels like TikTok or Instagram. Let's talk about how this product launch started to impact paid marketing efficiency. So why did this new feature have such a transformative impact on your paid CAC, your paid customer acquisition cost?
At the same time as we were releasing this feature, I onboarded a UA team of 2 people, and we were able to focus specifically. I mean, the timing was kind of perfect, even if not planned like this. And they decided to be extremely focused on doing creatives and a lot of creatives about this AI tool, AI background feature. Because it was, as I told you, it was kind of obvious for us that was the wow effect was big. So the whole idea was how to do creative that gives this wow, and you get the hook. For Photoroom, the best hook has always been this before after, or a sentence, a bit of controversial sentence to catch your attention. But before after is what has always been working for Photoroom. Our product is visual on Instagram or TikTok. Of course, it's obvious. And this team has been, focusing on building creatives and tool to generate creatives during, during a year. And with this work ethic of, you test creative on Monday, on Tuesday or Wednesday, you get the first results, you do iteration, you ship them in your main meta TikTok campaign. And you do that every week. Every week, you look at this, at the CAC, you look at the ROAS of your campaign, and you just scale. And it has been, amazing to see how fast we have been able to scale, because something that we didn't plan was that not only, I mean, paid UA is mostly a question of creative and the signal you send to the network, but creative is a big part and of course your product should convert, but that is a given. If you don't have a product that converts, well, then marketing becomes and growth becomes much more complicated. But so a strong part of it is creative. And by having this new wow effect around, I import a photo, I generate a background, I got what the product is about, we decreased dramatically the CPI by an order of magnitude of 10. And so that was huge. And that helped us run campaign on Android in markets, in big markets like Brazil, Thailand, Mexico, Indonesia, where usually for subscription apps, it's hard to monetize and to make paid acquisition on Android. And this feature had two benefits. It decreased the cost of acquiring user because we were able to generate new creative. We were the only one having this on mobile at that time. So it was like a blue ocean. We were the only one. We have this wow effect going into Instagram feed and the reels and everywhere. And at the same time, we were targeting an adjacent segment of user, which was SMBs and people selling online, not only on marketplaces.
Mm-hmm.
So some people in those huge markets, Android markets, but were able to pay when usually they pay less because this is Android. Well, for many reasons, on Android people pay less than on iOS.
Let me break that down because there was a lot of great stuff in there. And so what I'm hearing you say is you had already been running paid ads, obviously, to acquire users on Photoroom. But with the launch of this new Automagical AI feature in 2023, your atomic ad unit that was working best for you, which was these before and after shots, the photo before you remove and replace the background and the photo after you remove and replace the background, got significantly better, which had two profound effects. The first was you were able to generate much better creative with this UA team that you hired. The second was those ads converted at a higher rate because you now had a more compelling core product experience.
Exactly.
And so that dramatically brought down your paid CAC, and it unlocked some international markets where previously your CPI, your cost per install, was prohibitively high. But now that it had come down significantly, you were able to acquire users cost efficiently in those markets. Exactly. Which channels were performing best for you? You mentioned TikTok and Instagram. Were those the two primary channels you were paying for ads on?
Yeah, Meta was for us at that time by far the biggest channel and the one that scaled the fastest. Because many small business owners are people like you and me at the end of the day. You know, they are consumer on their personal life and prosumer or SMB on their professional lives. They are on Instagram, on TikTok, and on YouTube. All of them. The difficulty is to catch them. It's not to know where they are. And but yes, definitely Meta.
Got it. So TikTok and Meta were your primary channels. And obviously, given the nature of your product, there are opportunities to actually use Photoroom tools in order to improve and accelerate your own creative process. So how have you used some of your own photo editing tools on your ad creatives?
Yeah, it's interesting. But of course, when they want to, when we have a new creative idea, as I told you, it's before after. So it's about the product, and it's very important for us. But I think it's very important also for the audience to, when you can put the product first in your marketing, everything is easier. And the way that your creative team is using the product is, of course, shooting the way they use the product and then how they play with the editing, etc., was a way for us to have more compelling and more impactful creative. So Photoroom, we just released 3 weeks ago an API to generate visual at scale. So basically, we want any brand, any commerce to be able to generate ads, static ads, just with our API. And today we are building our own tool to be able to leverage this API to generate static ads for Google campaign. And we are using it now, to generate our static ads. We just use a bit of prompt and prompting and our own API. And from one product photography, we can generate thousands of ads in different languages and with different backgrounds, etc., etc. And this is amazing to be able to use your own tool, to be more efficient and more impactful.
Yeah, it's such an uncommon advantage because you get to use and refine your own product and more deeply understand your customer needs because you're using it for your own ad
Yeah.
creatives, which are then accelerating the growth of your business. So it's such a virtuous flywheel. You talked about your creative team earlier and the process of, okay, we come up with creatives on Monday, we review them on Tuesday, we're constantly looking at payback periods and ROAS. How has how big is your creative team and what are the roles of the members of that team? And then what is the process they go through for creating ads and how has that changed with AI?
So Cedric, who joined us to lead the UA team, I heard quite fast someone in the creative team, Jelly, who has been building everything from scratch for us. So she's a creative strategist, but at the same time, she's coding her own tool. And so she has a background in filming, so she has a lot of ideas about which kind of ad work. She has an amazing storytelling skills, but at the same time, she has been building her own tool to, for example, you have a good concept that is working. You want to translate it into 20 languages. Now, I mean, she built a tool leveraging 11 Labs and other API to be able to do voiceover or adding music automatically. And she did that a year and a half ago. So that was also an unfair advantage in a way because all of this was quite new. So I think for paid UA team and creative team, they should embrace AI and they should embrace coding. And having strong creative skills plus a good knowledge of how to use AI, you create we do 400 ads with a 2 people team.
Yep.
400 ads a month with a 2 people team. And that's only possible because we have the tooling that they have built themselves to make this happen. And
it's funny you mentioned that number 400 ads per month because that was the exact same number that Miranda Payne, who leads growth at Rona, used on our last episode. And so there seems to be kind of a benchmark of what these creative teams are capable of. And I'm excited to see how those numbers change over the next couple of years because with all of these AI tools like Suno and 11 Labs, it just feels like it's accelerating more and more. And you mentioned some of the same tools that Miranda and her team use at Rona as well. So let's close before our lightning round with this question around international expansion, because you mentioned that you have this breakthrough product launch, it reduces CPIs, that unlocks the ability for you to expand into some of these lower GDP per capita markets where maybe previously it just wasn't cost efficient. It sounds like you're also using tools like 11 Labs to be able to translate ads into other languages. And so what has that process looked like? And what are some of the countries where you've gotten the most early traction?
So the way we see international Photoroom is we have English speaking market and top English speaking market, US, UK, where as any subscription app, if you want to be successful, you have to be successful there. And then we map all other markets with a mix of what we call strategic market and more regional leader market, etc., etc. And strategic market are mostly markets where we think we can take a competitive advantage because we will be the first one to enter the market, or market that if we want to be successful as a company, we need to be big there. And for example, Brazil is one of them, but Japan and Korea are also some of them. And the more we run I run growth at Photoroom, the more I believe that Japan and Korea, you should treat them separately. You really need to think about the market. I mean, you need people in the market, in Korea or in Japan, or Korean and Japanese people in France, if you find them, but that knows deeply the market. It's not just about translating and changing a few templates in the app. It's really about getting deep in the culture, understanding the willingness to pay, understanding, how they approach SaaS, how they approach mobile subscription, how they approach all of this. This is, to me, very different from the rest of the world, where it's our experience at Photoroom. I'm not saying it's the same for everybody, but Western approach tends to work at least in a decent way everywhere in the world. So of course we localize, of course we translate. Then in core markets, we try to go a bit deeper. We work with local people to improve the translation, to have specific, for example, in Brazil, we have templates for Mercado Libre because this is the biggest marketplace in Brazil, etc., etc. But a successful ad, like a really winning creative ad in the US, usually it's not a bad ad in Brazil or in France, you know. And because of this, we scale our creative process just by translating and putting voiceover on top of our ad. And it's worked decently. It's probably not one, I mean, it's 80-20, you know. For 80% of the user, it's working and they don't get offended. Of course, we have a few comments here and there, but at the scale we are, it's working.
So what I'm hearing you say, and this resonates because we saw very similar patterns when I was leading the product growth team at Quizlet, and a big focus of ours was international expansion. We started in what we called the Anglospheres. So obviously the US was our largest market by far, but then we had the UK, we had Canada, we had Australia, New Zealand. And then we started to expand into other European and Southeastern Asian markets. Often it's Germany, it's France, maybe it's Spain, and then you mentioned Japan, South Korea. And one of the things we found, which it sounds like is consistent with Photoroom's experience, is for a while you can get by with just translating the product, localizing the currencies and the prices of your subscription. And in many cases, it sounds like for you, using the same ads that performed well in the US, obviously translating them and adapting them on the margins. But for the most part, that worked. But at a certain point, you get to this inflection where you need to more deeply localize the product experience, not just for the language, but for the culture. And you mentioned Japan and Korea are two countries where that's particularly true. Germany is another one that I've heard can be different just because privacy considerations are so much more important in Germany than they are in a lot of other countries. So how have you adapted some of your go-to-market playbooks, say, for a market like Japan or Korea that is culturally so different, or for a market like Brazil where the average spending power of a consumer or prosumer customer might just be lower? Is there anything you've done differently in those markets to get early adoption?
The biggest difference for Japan and Korea versus rest of the world, not necessarily in the go-to-market, but the way we are structured is we are working with local agency. While for the rest, for all other markets, I rely on the international team, growth team I built out of Europe. We have people from Brazil, China, Poland, like many different nationalities in Europe. But because of this culture mix, we are able to challenge ourselves or, quickly get a sense of is it totally off or not. But for Japan and Korea, we have a dedicated agency. For Brazil and for same for Thailand and Mexico, some things that help us scale there is also introducing the weekly. And that was going, so we iterated a lot and transparently at the very beginning, I don't know if I shared this already before online, so you will be the first. I was a bit suspicious about going to weekly because I had this image of apps asking for crazy weekly price, trying to scam a bit the user, and I was like, do we really want Photoroom to be that kind of app? But someone from my team challenged me and challenged the founder saying, let's try, let's test, let's look closely at the numbers. And before taking a decision based on what we feel, let's just get some insight. So we run the test. And what we realize is Photoroom user are either people who use Photoroom every day because it's critical for their business and they take the yearly. Or there are people that use Photoroom from time to time.
Yep.
Often, but from time to time. And those users were taking the monthly because as most of mobile apps, we had a monthly and a yearly plan.
Yep.
But monthly they just take it because it was a cheaper price compared to yearly. So when we introduced the weekly, all of them were like, okay, I can even get a cheaper price. So I will go with the weekly. But for us, a weekly plan, through a lot of editing, blah, 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 is making much more money than a monthly plan because people come more often too. Because it's cheaper, they come more often or they stay a bit more, etc. And all that to say that we introduced the weekly because we found out that it was bringing more revenue, but more importantly, it was fitting better our user needs. But the introducing of weekly price also give access. It improves accessibility of our pro feature in many markets with lower GDP.
I think those are both such great insights. And to sort of sum that up, what I heard was you have these two different archetypes of markets. You have Japan and Korea, where there are some real cultural barriers for a Western company to understand the local customer context. And so you hire
Yeah.
a local agency and they help you navigate these cultural differences and make sure that you're adapting not just the language of your product, but the look and feel and positioning of your product to match the local context. Whereas in markets like Brazil or some of these other lower GDP per capita markets that you've expanded into recently, the biggest bottleneck is really just the accessibility of your price point. And so
Yeah.
one way of solving for that is changing your subscription price to better reflect local willingness and ability to pay. But another is moving from annual and monthly plans only to weekly subscription plans, which are much more accessible for a customer that just doesn't have a huge amount of disposable income to be putting against a digital subscription, even one that's very essential to their business. So I
Yeah.
think those are both two great insights to end on. Let's get to our lightning round. So I'm going to ask you a series of rapid fire questions. We'll do about half a dozen of these. These can be short 1 to 2 sentence responses. And we'll start with one I always like to ask, which is, what is your favorite part about working at Photoroom, and what's one thing that you would change?
I think my favorite part, so we are a remote company, and my favorite part is the transparency. No DM at Photoroom on Slack. Everything is transparent on Slack,
Mm.
on Notion. Everyone knows exactly where we stand financially, who are investor, what's going well, what's not going well. And that goes also with a culture of accountability in a sense. When things are not going well, people are not afraid to share that this is not going well, and that's fine. Um, because because everything is transparent. And another interesting point with full transparency is the speed of iteration. You were a growth leader, and many growth leaders are listening today. You have meetings most of the days, and you can't be. First, you don't want as a person logging a thing at 6 p.m. that you have 200 DMs. That's one thing, and two, you don't. You are probably not always the only person who has an information. So rather than asking me or anyone in DM the questions that will unlock you at let's say 2 p.m., you ask it in a public channel, and it's likely that someone has the answer.
Yep.
And so you are unlocked in a matter of 10 minutes rather than 4 hours. And speed compound. And last thing, which is great with transparency, is now with all the AI tool, it's much more easiest to create a knowledge base. You plug one or two tools, and you are able to query your Slack channels and your Notion database and get answer about anything that is happening in the company. And this is super powerful.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, you hear all the time about the benefits of transparent cultures. And it's something that I feel like more and more tech companies are really doing, not just paying lip service to. But one of the underappreciated benefits is speed, because when everything's out in the open, people are able to just react so much more quickly. And it can be painful at times. Like, there are costs, but on the whole, you're able to just move so much faster and resolve problems so much quicker. And so I love that answer. This next one's going to be tough. What's the single most amazing photo you've ever seen created using
Wow.
Photoroom?
I think what's amazed me is when I see uh, shops fully made out of Photoroom, like online shops, Shopify stores, Instagram page, and you can see not necessarily only with a watermark, because now we remove it and people are usually pro user, but you can see that it's generating by Photoroom, by how it's built, etc. And every time we share something like that on Slack, I'm like, yeah, it's nice to see that we are useful. It's not only they are using your product, but you can see that they use your product to run their business.
Yep. Yeah, well, and you mentioned before how rewarding it is to be working at a company like Photoroom, where your product is directly contributing to the livelihoods and businesses of your customers. I worked at Fair for a year, and these product photos are so important for these online storefronts now. And so, a company like yours that's allowing these small, medium-sized business owners who are already juggling so many balls every day to be able to improve the efficiency and the quality of the photos they're using to be the face of their business is pretty transformative.
Yeah.
If you weren't a growth and marketing leader, what would you do instead?
I think I would be a teacher. Yeah, I like explaining concept. I like sharing my knowledge with other people, and yeah, teacher would be a good one.
Any particular subject that you would most want to teach?
No, not really. That's why I'm not a
Okay.
teacher.
A generalist.
Yeah.
What do you think is the secret for maximize the impact of new product features with viral potential? We've spent most of the episode today talking about this breakthrough AI feature that you all launched in 2023. How do you harness that as a growth leader?
I don't think we are super good at maximizing virality. I would take for one Photoroom example and maybe then zoom out a bit. But at Photoroom, I think what we are good at is capturing a trend, an AI trend around photo, putting it into the app, and then spread the word. And in a way, we spread the word with paid because this is where we are super good at. But it also then has a secondary effect, which is word of mouth about your product. And as we mentioned, creator mentioning it and people speaking around them about photo, blah, 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 etc. So this is our way today. But I'm not sure. I mean, it's not, we are not the best at doing this kind of virality. I do think that one point to maximize organic is to leverage the product as much as possible. Putting your product in front of your brand campaign, putting your product in the center of everything is a way to maximize your organic. Then you have all the things about speaking at the same time on every channel about your product to maximize the impact or building viral loops. But not every product can be viral. You know,
Yep.
we are photo editing, but we are photo editing for sellers. So by design, this is not as viral as other apps that can do avatars, for example.
Yep.
And our product is not viral by design. So I'm not sure we should force it, but what we should do is put the product in front of our marketing.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. And I think the mistake some companies make is they either say, well, our product's not viral and they don't lean into organic word of mouth at all, or they try to force a square peg into a round hole and turn their product into a social network. And it just doesn't work because that's not how their product naturally operates.
Exactly.
You know, Facebook gets credited for building the first modern product driven growth team roughly 15 to 20 years ago now. And their biggest insight was that their product was the number one asset for driving viral growth. Obviously, they had a lot of advantages because they were one of the early social networks.
Yes.
And so their product was truly viral. But there are still some core concepts and principles that almost any consumer product can use in order to put its product first, make it top of mind in the psyches of their customers, and then just generate a little bit more word of mouth on the margins. And then you use that word compounding earlier. There's compounding benefits to that over time.
Yeah, and it's a balance. You know, it's a bit as the same debate as brand versus performance. To me, if you just start by saying you will build, you will grow by working your brand, I don't think that works. You need to a pull in the, you need to a pull in the market. You need to make it in front of the user first. Then you start growing. Then your brand starts becoming bigger, so you can focus a bit more. It's a bit what we did, you know, by removing the background. We had the background. We had the watermark. The watermark was our first brand loop. It brings word of mouth. Then we got a bit bigger thanks to paid. We remove the watermark, and then we can expand our brand by saying, well, we are doing more than just removing background. We are the creative agency. It's a balance, you know, depending on when in your lifestyle as a product and as a company you are.
Yeah, well, and what I heard there was at a certain point, you didn't need the watermark anymore because your brand had already become so strong and ubiquitous that you could remove it, improve the free user experience in the process, and you're already getting word of mouth because people just love your product at that point.
Yeah.
So last question here before we wrap up. How do you think AI will continue to change photo and video editing in the years to come?
Well, I mentioned it at the very beginning of our interview, which is 5 years ago when I joined. That was a pitch of our CEO that AI will change photo editing forever, and mobile is where you take pictures. So this is where everything starts, and Photoroom is added at the center of this. Now, 2025, we all use AI every day. I think there is a new model, even better every week. I think we are not far from a moment where you and me won't be able to distinguish what's generated and what's real. And I think when we'll be at that point, that will make AI the default for selling online. Because it will be as good as what you can see do by yourself and do in reality. Last thing is, other topic is maybe, for us is also not only how AI change the outcome, but also how you interact with the photo.
Mm-hmm.
Today we mentioned you mentioned, and you are right. There is tons of photo editing app on the market, but they all have their own selling points, some difference in the product, etc. But we are still on the historical usage of you have a picture, a photo, you edit, you have an editor, blah, 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 blah. Is it that natural? Maybe with AI, we'll come to a world where editing will be driven by voice, and maybe you won't have me starting a picture and you iterating, starting a design and you iterating on it, but me just saying a prompt to Photoroom and you just iterating on my prompt by adding something, and the next picture will be an iteration, a prompt iteration, basically. I have no clue about this, but it would be interesting to follow how this evolves.
I agree. It's an exciting vision, and the tools themselves are interesting and fun to watch evolve every week. As you said, the pace of innovation has been so rapid. But what I find even more exciting is the opportunities that the tools create in people's lives. More and more people are leaving traditional jobs and becoming creators and doing what they're most passionate about, and doing it in countries that previously just didn't have access to these technologies. So super exciting note to end on. Anything that you want to say to the audience before we wrap up here, Olivier?
I think you mentioned it, growth leaders should not overlook speed. Speed is by far what compounds the most in startup. This is your most precious asset, and this is also times the constraint you are working against. So if you don't move fast enough compared to your big competitor, you will die. But speed compounds very fast. So think about how you can make speed compounds in your team. So I mentioned transparency. Of course, AI tools are also helping that. And that would be my last feedback on this is just think about how you can make your team work faster.
Yeah, I love it. Speed is transformative and it compounds. Great note to end on. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Olivier. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you, Phil.